remain standing for a moment of contemplative silence for our great country, its people, and those serving it around the world. Thank you. We just celebrated Mental Health Awareness Month here in these chambers. Two other events today, very important days. Cinco de Mayo is the, when is Cinco de Mayo? Anybody tell me?
Today is Cinco de Mayo.
Which is the adjunct to when is the 4th of July? Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May, obviously celebrated in the United States and in Mexico. Today is the date observed in the United States as a celebration of Mexican heritage and pride. It is not Mexico's Independence Day, the most important national patriotic holiday in Mexico. That is actually celebrated on September 16th. Today is also in Israel Yom HaZikaron. Yom HaZikaron is the day of remembrance for the fallen soldiers of Israel and victims of terrorism, and it is Israel's official Memorial Day, enacted into law in 1963. The clerk, please call the roll.
Majority Leader Borgia.
Here.
Minority Leader Testa.
Here.
Mr. Boykin. Here. Mr. Burrows. Here. Mr. Gelfarb. Here. Mr. Harcum.
Here.
Mr. Jenkins.
Here.
Mr. Mazzano. Here. Ms. Marcotte. Here. Ms. Parker.
Here.
Ms. Perez.
Here.
Ms. Shimsky.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Breckman. Ms. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Williams. Mr. Chairman,
Present.
we have a quorum.
Excellent. Call for a motion on the consent agenda.
Yes, I would like to move the consent agenda with the following two changes. On page 27, item number 64, please add as co-sponsors Legislators Kaplowitz, Shimsky, A. Williams, L. Williams, Borgia, Jenkins, and Perez. And the item below that, number 65, please delete the assignment to the Appropriations Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Mr. Testa. And Mr. Marzano? So no objections. The consent agenda moved as...
Sorry, excuse me.
forgive me. Ms. Borgia?
D1, did we talk about this? I'm sorry, hold on.
Sure.
I'm sorry, say again. What is it? Page 27. On page 14. Sorry about that. Item 1, the county attorney, sever and over that item, page 14.
So page 14, the first item from the county attorney. Act
Correct.
law. Severed, overed. Any other items, Ms. Borgia?
Mr. Chair, can you just clarify the three things that...
Sure, Ms. Borgia, just repeat this. So we have page 14, item.
Page 14, item number 1, under the county attorney, sever and over. Page 27, number 64, add as co-sponsors to this legislation, legislators Kaplowitz, Shimsky, A. Williams, L. Williams, Borgia, Jenkins, and Perez. And then item number 65, delete the referral to the Appointments Committee. So it's only going to the Committee on Legislation.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, with those three then, Mr. Testa. Okay, Mr. Marzano?
Concur.
Okay, excellent. No objections, then consent agenda moved. At this point, minutes approval. Majority Leader.
Yes, I would like to move we approve the minutes of the Monday, April 7th, 2014 meeting.
Mr. Testa? Okay, Mr. Marzano?
Yes.
No objections, minutes approved at this point. Excellent. Will the clerk please call the rules for public comment?
Each speaker shall be limited to 3 minutes. The first speaker is Charlotte Fawn. As she makes her way down the side aisle behind the black ropes, I'll call the next 5 speakers. Raina Hobson, Dr. Edward Williamson, Daniel Berger, Nada Cater, and Bart Warden. The first speaker is Charlotte Fawn.
Hope I get this right. My name is Charlotte Fawn. I'm a resident of Hastings-on-Hudson, and I'm speaking here on behalf of the Protect the Palisades Coalition, which is a coalition of more than 40 groups and thousands of individuals that formed in response to a threat to a regional and national treasure that is looming on the horizon, literally. I'd like to, I should say I'm a board member of the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, which is a litigant in one of the 2 lawsuits that are underway on this issue. I'm also a board member of the Friends of the Old Croton Aqueduct. And the aqueduct is one of many Westchester landmarks that will be impacted eventually, almost certainly, if this building goes forward in its present design. I'd like to thank the sponsors of the draft resolution for introducing it, and I'd like to thank the entire board for taking it into consideration. Since time is limited, I'll try to crystallize this. The heart of the issue is a 143-foot glass office building that LG Electronics plans to build on a 27-acre site in the borough of Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. This building is 4 times the height of the 35-foot limit that's been respected for decades in that entire area. It would be the first building north of Fort Lee to rise above the tree line of the Palisades and would certainly be visible from this side of the river. The borough of Englewood Cliffs put through several zoning changes that made this possible, an extraordinary variance allowing the building to be 4 times the traditional height. And there are 2 lawsuits underway now challenging this zoning. So there would be a direct and immediate impact on the experience of visitors to several cultural institutions that we all love, Cloisters, Wave Hill, and many of the parks in North Manhattan and Riverdale would be affected. Nearly every opponent of the height of this building also has said that there is a virtual certainty that it would trigger a wave of development moving northward along the corridor, the 9W corridor in New Jersey, that would gradually move up the cliffs. And I think most people are familiar with what is that?
3 minutes, yes. You can finish your thought and
Okay,
others.
thank you. So the critical point is that the site is large enough to accommodate the same number of jobs, the same square footage, and provide the same tax revenue to Englewood Cliffs on its 27-acre site, and its architect has admitted as much, that it could be laid on its side with no loss if they build horizontally instead of vertically. But so far, despite a very, very intense public campaign and dozens or maybe by now hundreds of endorsements asking them to lower the building, that still has not happened. And it would be wonderful if Westchester County goes on record as opposing the height of the building. No one opposes the project. They're building a new headquarters campus. But if they just lower the building, They'll be regarded as the good corporate citizen they always have been.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Raina Hobson.
Good evening. My name is Raina Hobson, and I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated Westchester Alumni Chapter. We have 900 chapters and 300,000 members worldwide. The Westchester Alumni Chapter was chartered in 1959 in response to the growing need for social, political, and educational programs in the Westchester area. Westchester Alumni Chapter has been an active part of the Westchester County community for 55 years and has 180 members. I am the co-chair of the Social Action Committee. This committee is responsible for addressing topics such as voter registration, education, women's equality, and many other concerns at the local, regional, and national level. Another important topic that we address is police accountability, which brings me here today. My chapter has protested to the unjust deaths of Dan Roy Henry Jr., Kenneth Chamberlain Sr., and Ramarley Graham. We have engaged in letter writing campaigns in justice for the unjust death of Trayvon Martin. We have met with the U.S. Senator Charles Schumer on several occasions to address many topics, including racial profiling. In the past, my chapter has joined forces and is one of the participating organizations of Westchester Coalition for Police Reform as we share common concerns, specifically to make a clear, pressing need to reform office, training, and the need for accountability within the county's police agencies. Our objective for the need to reform officer training is crucial to our community. We strongly urge the county to offer improved training to police officers. The use of force, such as tasers and firearms, are not an automatic way to intervene in a situation. We strongly urge the county to explore the use of crisis intervention teams who are trained in dealing appropriately with individuals with mental health needs. Our objective for the need for accountability within the county's policy agencies is also crucial to our community. We strongly believe that the county's police agencies are too closely involved with conducting its own investigations. We strongly urge support in a comprehensive and objective investigation that is provided through an independent and neutral investigator where all information uncovered is reported impartially and without prejudice. This is an important step that must be taken in order to provide the justice that each individual is entitled to receive. We appreciate immediate response to our concerns so that we can all live in an environment without fear from those who are in positions to protect us. We thank you for this opportunity to hear our concerns.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Edward Williamson.
Good evening. My name is Pastor Williamson, Bethel Baptist Church, located at 1 Fisher Court, White Plains, New York. Also member of the Ministers Fellowship Council of White Plains and vicinity. Of course, this is my first time addressing this body, so I thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. We stand in solidarity with the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform. And as a minister of the gospel, preacher, pastor, representing voices in the community, I stand for the silent voices. I stand for the concerns of often the least of those. And so as we look at these issues, perceptions matter. Perceptions matter. And that is when we investigate, or officers investigate themselves, and the perception is that there is some unfairness or maybe some taintedness to the objectivity of the investigation, then it does something to the community's trust. And so we stand to say that there should be independent investigations. We stand to say that there should be better training. We stand to say that we should never forget those who have fallen. Every time I see the commercial about the button that saves your life, I remember Mr. Chamberlain. The button that was supposed to save life cost him his life. We should never forget that. We should never forget when public safety officers are called to help someone, and then someone tragically dies on the other end as a result. We want to have trust in our officials. We want to have trust in our government, but the hand seems to be turning backward when it comes to people of color and minorities. When we see issues like stand your ground laws on the rise, that's a concern to us. When citizens feel that they have to take up arms to protect themselves instead of rely on the government that has the right to bear arms and is the enforcer of laws, that concerns us. And so I ask that you seriously consider the presentations that are brought forth, that you listen to all the voices, especially the voices of the victims, the voices of the least, and the voices of the silent ones. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Daniel Berger.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here tonight. My name is Daniel Berger, and I'm the director of the Lower Hudson Valley chapter of the New York Civil Liberties Union. The NYCLU is a proud member of the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform, a group of organizations, religious institutions, and individuals committed to building safer communities by strengthening community police relations, enhancing police training and practices, and instituting appropriate measures to ensure transparency and accountability within police departments throughout the county. In addition to the NYCLU, coalition members include the Anti-Racist Alliance, Blacks in Law Enforcement of America, the Community Unitarian, Memorial United Methodist, and Mount Hope AME Zion churches, the Delta Sigma Theta Sororities Westchester Alumni Chapter, Ethical Culture Society of Westchester, Hudson Valley Community Coalition, Peekskill Committee for Justice, MLK Institute for Nonviolence, Westpac, and the Portchester, Rye, White Plains, Greenberg, and Yonkers branches of the NAACP. Our coalition came together following the killing of Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. by officers of the White Plains Police Department. This incident and others like it, such as the shootings of Dan Roy Henry by Mount Pleasant Police and Samuel Cruz by police in New Rochelle, make clear the need for reform. And so we've come before you tonight to ask that the county take specific measures to improve police training and practices and to promote fairness and accountability from area law enforcement. We recognize that steps are already underway to improve training at the Westchester Police Academy, and we applaud this important development. We ask that the county also make available optimal in-service training to the municipal police forces, particularly regarding the use of force continuum, and we would welcome the opportunity to work with the county in encouraging municipal police departments to avail themselves of this training. While proper training is essential, it's necessary that the departmental policies and practices align with these lessons. And so we ask that the county develop and disseminate to municipal departments best practices, again, particularly as regards proper use of force, as well as the utilization of dedicated crisis intervention teams to respond to situations involving emotionally disturbed individuals, and that the county renew funding so that crisis intervention teams can again be readily available to police across Westchester. Given the stark racial disparities in the makeup of police departments throughout the county, and particularly departmental leadership, we ask that the legislature explore means to promote diversity in law enforcement so that the demographics of these departments more accurately reflect the communities they serve. Finally, in order to advance transparency and accountability among the more than 40 police departments operating in Westchester, we ask that the county establish an independent oversight body with subpoena power to investigate cases of police misconduct and to make recommendations for disciplinary actions and policy reforms to respective municipalities. We believe that these measures would strengthen our police forces and our community, and we look forward to working in partnership to make them a reality. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Nada Carter.
Good evening. I'm here representing Westpac as a member of the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform, and I'm here specifically to discuss the coalition's concern about racial disparities in the makeup of police departments all over Westchester County, particularly in departmental leadership. Currently, all hiring and promotion is based strictly on civil service exam performance. How do our police departments publicize these exams and make related educational resources available to everyone in our county? It's a question for this body. we're asking the legislature to diversify the police force by implementing relevant educational programs at Westchester Community College that publicize the civil service exam and provide opportunities for students from diverse backgrounds to pass this exam. This issue was the subject of a U.S. Department of Justice lawsuit in the 1980s, which resulted in a court order that certain police departments in Westchester had to take actions to diversify along race and gender lines, such as publicizing the civil service exams and providing these educational resources. What level of effort has actually been put towards this? We do know that the numbers have improved very little, if at all. In New Rochelle, the leadership of the department is entirely white in a city with 50% people of color demographics. There are 0 Black or Latino lieutenants or captains. Virtually the same holds true for Yonkers, Mount Vernon, and White Plains. Based on figures from a short time ago, Yonkers has a single Latino lieutenant, Mount Vernon a single Black lieutenant and a Black police commissioner, and White Plains 2 Black lieutenants. The remaining 100-some-odd leadership positions in these departments are entirely white. Blacks are about 20% of the population of Yonkers, but less than 5% of the police force. Almost 85% of the Yonkers police force is white, double the white population rate in Yonkers. Why does this matter? Communities are healthier when their own members are involved in institutions that govern and police them. An imposition of white institutional culture on communities of color can lead to cultural misunderstandings and resentment. Please let us know how you plan to move forward on this important issue that has negatively impacted communities of color for too long.
Thank you.
Bart Warden. As Mr. Warden makes his way over, I'll call the remaining speakers. Regina Riley, Damon Jones, Jeffrey Smith, Kenneth Chamberlain, Michael Vichy, and Edmund Riley. If you all could just come down the aisle to my left and just wait behind the black ropes. Mr. Warden.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Bart Worden. I'm the clergy leader for the Ethical Culture Society of Westchester. We are a humanist congregation on Saxonwood Road in White Plains. I'm here on behalf of the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform to urge you to press harder for more reforms in our police practices, and in particular, more reforms in terms of our police training. We've had a number of interactions in recent times where civilians have been killed by police officers at their hands in their own apartments. This is an unnecessary and tragic thing that's been happening, and have not been hearing much about the way to address this in a more healthy way. There's been a lot of changes in policing, it seems to me, in the last couple of decades, and that in particular has involved the more ready use of lethal force in trying to respond to situations in the community. I've also worked in the mental health field for over 30 years, working directly with people with psychiatric disabilities. And I can tell you that about 20, 25 years ago, when police would show up to help us with a person who was very disturbed, they would agree to take their weapons off. In recent years, it's more likely that they will be bringing tasers, beanbag guns, weapons, riot shields, and these are things that are very frightening to people who are already in a distressed state. Our police officers are not well enough prepared to deal with these individuals without having these things available. And without that, we can't really expect they're going to be successful in helping people relax enough to be dealt with. So we urge that we change the training. We urge that we change the personnel. Having the crisis team, the mobile crisis team, years ago was a really very huge help in protecting the lives of our citizens. It would be great to have that reinstated. Failing that, finding more ways to involve citizens in the interactions that happen when people are in these distressed states would be very welcome. We shouldn't be in a world where we're having to protect ourselves from our police officers. But that's been the case for Samuel Cruz, that's been the case for Kenneth Chamberlain, and we should not have that situation here in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Regina Riley.
I'm here to speak for another group of silent people. And I'm also here to talk about accountability for those who have been destroying them. 55 million plus children in this country since 1973. In New York State, there is another a push to cause even less accountability regarding abortion. In fact, you could say that with this bill S5881, which is the 10th section of the Women's Equality Act, it's anything but equality. It's more like war on women. I'll give you an example of an advertisement which would be perfectly clear and fine because it would be true if this bill passes up in Albany. Stay free out of jail card for abortionists, both MDs and non-doctors who force and coerce abortions on women. Because you know what? That's just what would happen if this bill passes, if this bill passes. Rapists, incestuous predators, statutory rapists, pedophilial sexual abusers of girls, bring victims to Planned Parenthood. Say you're their child's parent. Sign for an abortion and or check the kid out for venereal diseases you've infected them with. No questions asked. If she's not pregnant yet, keep abusing her again and again. Planned Parenthood does not have to report suspected child abuse. They make money from you. They're not mandated reporters because they have friends in Albany, especially Andrew Cuomo and the Assembly Speaker Silver, and most of the Democrats who are in the state Senate, as well as the 76% of the Democrats who make up the Assembly. Cuomo's happy to allow forced and coerced abortions to be taken off the penal code. That is, no jail time, no accountability. He and Speaker Silver are happy to let non-doctors abort babies for any reason, right up until the time of delivery. That's what they're allowing, folks, if this thing passes. They are pleased to let babies be tortured to death, right up until the time of delivery, because to die is to get tortured. Sex selection abortion now, not even with this thing passing, right now. Sex selection abortion, especially where it's a baby girl, are more likely to happen because boys are not the ones that most people want. Reduction abortion, if they're twins, sure. You can only handle one. Disembowelment of one, check all. Just check sure all her parts are there.
Ms. Riley, please finish.
Yes, I'm finishing, all right? So I'm looking for accountability. And this bill, S5881, is a death pill to everyone, especially to the people of color who are now make up the lion's share of the people who are aborted in this state.
Thank you.
Damon Jones.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Damon Jones. I'm the New York representative of Blacks in Law Enforcement of America, and I'm the former Northeast Region President of the National Black Police Association. I am an employee at Westchester County Department of Corrections, but tonight I do not represent the department. I'm speaking on behalf of the organization. Our organization has, for the last 10 years, have been addressing the issue of police accountability and oversight and proper training of police officers. We do understand that the police officers, their initial training come from inside Westchester County. It is done by public safety. Then they're sent out to the 43 municipalities. But the problem is there. Because if you have a training at a certain level and then you send them to police departments and their ongoing training or updated training is not happening, what you have is you have a liability. You have a liability with a badge and a gun. because they're not being properly trained to protect and serve. Even the Westchester County training, unfortunately, our own public safety commissioner does not even know in his testimony, one of his testimonies, he didn't know that there was national accreditation. The Department of Correction is nationally accredited. Our own training should be nationally accredited for our police officers because they have direct contact to the public. And the public, as taxpayers that pay the police department's salary, their equipment, and their training, should have a say-so in that. Lately, the communities throughout Westchester have had no say-so. They have no say-so in how they have their police department run. NADA was beautiful in giving the numbers of the racial breakdown. Your police department should reflect the community that it serves. It makes no sense if you have Mount Vernon that has a population of 80% African American, and they only have 20% police officers there. And this is throughout Westchester County. And because of the fact that there's a bad relationship, and young children, Black and Hispanic, see the issues that's going on between the police departments and the community, they do not want to take the test. My wife is a detective in Mount Vernon. I'm a correction officer. Our two children, they won't have nothing to do with being in law enforcement because of that type of relationship and because incidents that they had with police, even though their parents are in law enforcement. So we need to, as a community, it's just not a Yonkers problem, it's not a White Plains problem, it's a Greenburgh problem, it's a Westchester problem. And we need to address it as Westchester. Now, I see, I'm going to leave, but I see that on the commercials, we talk about desegregation and the zoning laws, and they're beating up Asarino, but we have to look at another thing, our police departments are segregated. So while we're doing that, we need to look at our police departments and desegregate our police department so it will reflect this community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Jeffrey Smith.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Smith. I'm a White Plains resident who has taken the time to attend the Citizens Academy in White Plains offered by the police department, which is a multi-week introduction to the police force, its policies, and the issues that they face. I'm also a housing attorney who deals extensively with residents of public housing, and I think it's particularly relevant in that the Chamberlain death took place in public housing. What I would like to suggest, since I am speaking here with county legislatures, is a role that the county can play that would be very instrumental in improving the quality of police interaction throughout the communities in Westchester. I have learned that there is a good history on the emergency intervention model. I have also seen by my participation with members of public housing that they often view themselves as people who are overseen by an occupying force, mainly the municipal police departments. Municipal police departments are instrumental in securing evictions, bar-out orders, and arrests that become predicates for disciplinary actions under HUD. The practices in public housing vary extensively across the county. And you've heard prior speakers talk about seeking best practices in coordination. I think the area of emergency intervention is one in which the county could come in to sensitive situations where there is a history, as there was in the Chamberlain case, of the person who is the subject of police attention and the police force, who responded in the Chamberlain case to the medic alert, the most highly weaponized division of the police department. I confirmed that when I attended the police academy. All warrants, not just in public housing, but throughout White Plains, are served by this same highly weaponized force. It's essentially a SWAT team. I think this type of response, especially in medical and mental health situations, needs to be very critically looked at, and to have a county-based emergency response team come in, which does not have any of the disadvantages of this history, is not viewed by the people who will be part of the drama that plays out in neighborhoods where there is a lot of tension, would be a very positive result, would yield positive results. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kenneth Chamberlain.
Good evening. This is my first time addressing the legislator, so I definitely want to thank you for allowing me this few minutes to speak to you to address this issue of police reform. Some of the things that you will hear me say are some of the things that have already been repeated, but I don't feel that it is redundant. It's not unnecessary, it's necessary. As I've already said, my name is Kenneth Chamberlain, Jr., and I am, too, a representative of the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform. I am here speaking on behalf of individuals such as Dan Roy Henry, my father, Kenneth Chamberlain, Sr., Detective Christopher Ridley, Kenneth Caseadu, Irma Marcos, and countless others who have been victims of some type of police misconduct, brutality, and criminality in Westchester. And in each of those cases, there was a failure to indict, even when the evidence suggested otherwise. Now, as a black person, as a black man, we are usually perceived as being anti-law enforcement. But I want to go on record right now with saying I am not now, nor have I ever been anti-law enforcement. In fact, I know that law enforcement officers have a very difficult job, and sometimes they have to make split decisions that could, in fact, cost someone their life. So, with that being said, to me, it is only logical that we not hold our law enforcement officers to a silver or a gold standard. They need to be held to a platinum standard. One of the ways that we do that is independent prosecutors and independent investigators that are separate and apart from the police municipalities that they serve in. Because you cannot have law enforcement officers investigating the own officers that they work with on a day-to-day. And you certainly cannot have a DA's office that works with these police municipalities on a day-to-day overseeing that investigation. It's an inherent conflict of interest. As my colleague Damon Jones said, this is it's not a New Rochelle, Mount Vernon, Yonkers, or White Plains issue. It's a Westchester issue. In fact, it's a New York State issue. And we can go so far as to say that police abuse is a nationwide issue. But we have to attack it locally. Westchester County has always been the leader in effecting some type of change. And a lot of other counties follow suit when they see what you do. So I'm asking you today to be that leader, to set the tone, to push for oversight. We as a community will do whatever we need to do to back you, to support you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Michael Vichy.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Mike Vichy, Redfield Street, Rye, New York, and Sustainable Playland is back to the negotiating table, so I'm back to the microphone. As you know, I am against Sustainable Playland's improvement plan. Forgive me for saying this, but I think that the county executive and the Board of Legislators have lost their collective minds. To kowtow to SBI and agree to pay legal fees and to complete the parking and traffic studies is absurd, if not bordering on illegal for the RFP process. Where does it state in any RFP that any municipality will pay the proposer for legal fees and any incurred costs to submit a plan to do business with them? I work for a company that holds an OGS contract with the state of New York. If I asked the state for money to help printing costs or studies or help me out in any way because we don't have deep pockets, my bid would have been rejected. Why? Because they want to do business with people who are financially sound. You are walking on a slippery slope, and this could set a precedent to others to follow. What about John Ambrose, owner of the Tiki Bar in Seaside Johnny's? Hey, Rob, City of Rye is taking me to court to force me to pay school taxes on a business on town parkland. Can you help me out with a lawyer? What about the operator of the cafeteria downstairs? Hey, Rob, I made my coffee a little too hot the other day and it scalded somebody. Can you help me with the defense? I pay my taxes to the City of Rye and the County of Westchester. In the likelihood that the City of Rye brings a suit against Sustainable Playland, my Rye taxes will pay on my side, and my county taxes will oppose me. How is that right? I'm in a lose-lose situation. Everybody is getting something except the taxpayers. This is not about the kids, never has been. This is about money, plain and simple. The county executive wants Playland to be profitable so the county doesn't lose money. Playland Sports Incorporated wants to run a profitable business, including not paying county or school taxes to make money. Kim Marquay and Bruce McLeod are real estate developers. Will they be paid to build the building for Playland Sports Incorporated? It's all about the money. If SBI were truly a 501c3 and only had the children in mind, they would raise money to build ball fields where kids could play for free. So everybody gets something, huh? The county gets an amusement park operator, Playland Sports gets a tax-free business, others get a profit from building the field house. And what do the City of Rye residents get? We get illegal parking, traffic, noise. We get to pay our fire department as first responders. So do we get anything? No. Oh wait, we do. We get screwed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Edmund Riley.
My name is Edmund Riley. I'm from Croton on the Hudson. I speak on behalf of the unborn children. Before I start, I'd like to make a comment on this police brutality stuff in Westchester County. As you know, there's been 3 major cases. One, tragically, was right outside these chambers here, across the street. Notice Democrats never stop the action of innocent death. They always build good monuments to people who died after it happens. Then there was the case of a football player in Mount Pleasant, and a case of a deranged person in public housing, which is always a dangerous situation for police. Half the people in this audience that spoke are people of goodwill. Half of them are people who want to incite political controversy. Maybe it's part of the gubernatorial election. It's a very dangerous thing to play with, law enforcement. And that anything that's done in that area, and I speak from experience, I've been in every one of your penal institutions in this county, including your county jail and your county penitentiary. I've been arrested 19 times by all sorts of cops and been jailed 17 times, so I know wherever I speak, in several different states. It's an occupational hazard and right to life. So I know what's out there. I know how cops act. And I know the circumstances they act. When you reform the training of these police. Because let me remind you, Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, had the highest police shooting, uniform shooting of civilians in the United States of America for 10 or 15 years, and that was a black city, with a black mayor and a black police commissioner. Prince George's County, to date, I believe, has one of the highest police shooting rates in the entire United States, and it's a black county with a black county executive. Let us not talk about Detroit, which had the worst record in the entire United States, and the city of Chicago. By the way, all controlled by Democrats, and when 2 or 3 of these incidents took place, they took place in Democratic cities with a Democratic mayor and a Democratic majority. And they could have reformed it at that time. Reform needs to take place. It should be done wisely, not by these Democrats. It should be wisely by citizen input on a big basis. Now here's what I came to talk about. I demand that the pro-abortionists on this legislature, which are majority in the Democratic Party, almost everyone sitting here on the Democratic side, investigate the way Planned Parenthood conducted abortion business in the city of Yonkers on the black and Hispanic population and the black Hispanic population of New Rochelle and Greenburgh. And there is no coincidence that they put those abortion mills in those minority areas. There's none at all. And Mount Vernon, I should say also, with a black administration, killing black children. What brings us to a point right now, Mr. Chairman, is with a Democratic governor talking about women's rights, they're not inspecting the abortion mills of this state, which are notorious cesspools just in public health.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have no more cards.
Okay, I note it's after 7:30. I'll call on Ms. Borgia for purpose of...
Thank you. I move that we suspend the regular order of business in order to conduct a public hearing.
Notice of today's public hearing was published in the Journal News. Proof of publication is available for inspection in the office of the clerk. Today's public hearing was submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects. Each speaker for this public hearing shall be limited to 3 minutes. The first speaker is Mr. Murray Bowden. The caption. A resolution to authorize the reallocation of approved expenditures for improvements in accordance with the report of the Solid Waste Agency and adoption of a related bond act.
Thank you.
Life's not simple. I'm qualified to speak on the MRF because I was on the committee that set up resource recovery for Westchester County. How many years ago? A lot of years ago. We designed how the basic process would be done, and now we're upgrading it again. So I'm concerned about that it be done correctly, because I've been involved with energy and resources for years and years and years. The latest, well, 9 years ago, I bought a Toyota hybrid Highlander because I wanted to support the industry of hybrids. 3 years ago, we bought a Prius. Last week, we bought that car, and it is not a hybrid. It's a straight one, because over the years, the automobile industry learned to change. And as a direct result of being in that meeting where you questioned about electric cars, I made the decision not to buy a hybrid because there's no payback. And Westchester County is not in the experimental business. You're in the business to do things for the public and not to experiment. That light bulb is the newest LED light bulb. Do you have any in your house? Okay, if you don't have the latest cost energy efficient, then you shouldn't be coming to Westchester County and saying we should have electric cars, because I pay for that. I paid for that light bulb at least 4 months ago, 3 months ago.
Murray, comments to the whole board, if you would, please. Thanks. Roll.
This board is responsible to spend our money reasonably. We're not in the experimental business. Electric cars are not something that Westchester County should be buying. And there's a big question about whether or not Westchester County should be even buying cars that are hybrid. I was part of the people who originally said that we should have hybrid buses. I was the original person who said we should have low-floor buses. We got them now. Took a long time. For Westchester to do anything in the electric car business is absolutely wrong. Recently, they closed the lanes on the George Washington Bridge. David Wildstein did it. I've created the Wildstein warning, pretty much like the Miranda warning. Pay attention, people. The gentleman walked out. I'm sorry he's not here, because it's required that Westchester County police officers wear this vest
Murray.
when they're at an accident. You want to have your rules, you choose to have your rules, and the police officers ignore them, and you want me to follow the rules? Wait a minute, which way is it?
Murray.
Either they follow the rules and wear this when they're at an
Finish.
accident,
Finish
and
your
you have no right to tell me I'm over.
Just finish
Which
your
is it? You guys, do you wear a vest when you're at an accident?
Murray, just finish your thought, please.
You don't.
We're good, sir.
You
Murray.
do. Does everybody?
Mr.
I know they're supposed to. So who enforces it?
Mr. Bowden, just finish your thought. Thank you, sir. We'll see you soon, Murray. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there are no more speaker cards.
Excellent. Call for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Excellent. Okay. Madam Clerk, we'll go to standing committees this time, please. And we'll take out of order, if you could, by unanimous consent, I'd like a motion to take number 37 and 38 on page 37, items 37 and 38 out of order, and take them first, if that's okay. Motion, Legislator Borgia, so moved.
So moved.
And second, Ms. Testa. Unanimous consent for all? Okay. Thank you.
Submitted by the Committees on Legislation and Federal and State Affairs. Item number 6954, a home rule request to amend the general. Over, Mr. Testa. Yeah, okay. Item number 7086, submitted by the Committee on Legislation, a resolution renaming the Academic Arts Building on the Valhalla campus the Henkin Academic Arts Building in appreciation for Dr. Joseph Henkin's 42 years of outstanding work and leadership.
Ms. Perez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. What this is a great tribute to Dr. Hankin for his many years of service and dedication to the college. One of the things that I'm particularly appreciative of Dr. Hankin is that as a child of immigrant parents, Dr. Hankin's various efforts to educate immigrant and new citizens resulted in the expansion of English as a second language program, where more than 4,000 individuals learned to speak English, and in the college, and about an approximate amount of 45,000 immigrants learned English as a second language in about a span of 11 years, where they actually went on to pursue their American dream now that they mastered their skill of the language. So that's just one of the many, many things that I myself am grateful to Dr. Hankin. And I'm honored to support this, and I'm actually very happy to support this. And I know that, my colleagues, our colleagues on this board will feel the same way as well. Thank you so much.
Excellent. And just FYI to all colleagues, Dr. Hankin will be with us 2 weeks from tonight when he'll be honored, and we'll have an opportunity at that point to certainly speak of him and his accomplishments and all. So not to truncate anybody's thoughts this evening, but again, just an FYI, the college and the necessity of doing this tonight, the college is having a gala Wednesday evening where having their board of trustees make this recommendation and our opportunity tonight to discuss and ratify. It's an opportunity then to have that announced Wednesday evening. So that was the reason I appreciate colleagues for taking it this evening. So with all that said, comment or thought on 7086 before us, the resolution. Okay, excellent. At this point, I'm sure long roll call.
Majority Leader Borgia.
Yes.
Minority Leader Testa.
Yes.
Mr. Boykin.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Mr. Gelfarb. Mr. Harcum.
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins.
Yes.
Ms. Marcotte? Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman? Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
The item passes 16-0. Item 6630, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects. A bond act authorizing the issuance of $500,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BIT 6B, purchase of computer equipment, 2011-2015.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to move this item, and I would turn it over to the chairman of the Economic Development Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Marquardt. As discussed and approved in the Economic Development Committee, we move this on to infrastructure.
Ms. Shimsky.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is a regular annual, this bond is a regular annual update and replacement of equipment bond for our IT services. This year, the request is for upgrades to existing storage with all of the files that we've accumulated over time, and with the increased sophistication of what's sent to us, this is definitely needed. We need to keep on track with it. So infrastructure is happy you voted out.
Excellent. Legislators, any discussion, comment? Otherwise, a long roll call at this time.
Majority Leader Borgia?
Yes.
Minority Leader Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Boykin?
Yes.
Mr. Burrows? Mr. Gelfarb? Mr. Harkam? Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano? Ms. Marcotte? Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Perez? Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman? Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Items approved 15-0. Item 6631, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond act authorizing the issuance of $2 million in bonds of the county to finance capital project BIT 30 E911 replacement equipment phase 2.
Yes, Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to move this for the Budget Committee, and I would turn it over to Economic Development.
Thank you, Legislator Marquardt. As discussed and approved in the Economic Development Committee, we move this on to the Infrastructure Committee.
This project will fund the second cycle of replacements of our E911 equipment over the course of 3 years. At this point, IT is in the beginning stages of looking at the best methodology of replacement. Involved will be purchase and installations of replacements for aging servers and PCs. And this is important to keep our 911 services operating at optimal level.
Legislators, those without objection, take the previous long roll call.
The item's approved 15-0. Item 6632, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond act authorizing the issuance of $500,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BIT 4B, Employee Productivity Systems 2013 through 2017.
Ms. Marcotte.
So moved for Budget, and I would turn it over to Economic Development.
Thank you, Legislator Marquardt. As discussed and approved in the Economic Development Committee, we move on to the Infrastructure Committee.
This bond is for employee productivity software to develop customized tools for training and development of training tools aimed at scheduling, assigning, and completion of training courses.
The comment, discussion, otherwise without objection, we'll take the previous long roll call, and I will, for employee productivity system purposes, not mention all the chairs, just the first one. So that will save us a moment or two each bond act. So ordered.
Okay, the item is approved 15-0.
That was an attempt at humor, by the way. I apologize. Fell completely flat. There we go.
Item 6742, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is an act to amend the district report for Refuse Disposal District Number 1 to authorize the reallocation of approved expenditures, noting that such reallocation of funds will not exceed the previously approved maximum expenditure of district funds.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to move it for Budget, and I would turn it over to Economic Development.
Thank you, Legislator Marquardt. As discussed and approved in the Economic Development Committee, we move and approve on to Infrastructure Committee.
I'll be discussing items 4 and 5 together. There were three major changes to our capital plan for our DEF services. One involved involved a study of 130 wells and landfill lines. As it turns out, we were able to do the work for substantially less money than we thought, and we also discovered a potentially good opportunity to conduct a landfill gas-to-energy study. The second one, we need to have a system for getting rid of our leachate so it does not go into stormwater. We needed a different route than the one we originally intended. The third one involves solid waste haulage vehicles. This was not use of hybrid technology, but DEF decided that instead of doing the customary purchases of vehicles, that they wanted to do a study involving a compressed natural gas truck. So these were the basic changes that were made in the report. They are all thoroughly vetted in our committees, and they look like good ideas, so we approve them.
Thank you. Legislative comment? Without objection, we'll take the previous long roll call.
The item is approved, 15-0. Item 6743, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond act authorizing the issuance of $450,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project RD017, Material Recovery Facility and Transfer Station Rehab.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you. So moved for the Budget Committee, and I'll turn it over to Economic Development.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. As discussed and approved in Economic Development, we move on to infrastructure.
This bond is to buy certain vehicles for the Department of Public Safety, that includes 15 replacement patrol vehicles, 5 replacement unmarked vehicles, 2
Ms. Shim-
replacement canine vehicles, and 1 replacement.
Well, actually, we're going to do 6743, which is the...
Oh, I apologize.
No, not at all. You appreciate the passion, and we'll be right with you in a moment. On 6743 itself,
We are not buying replacement vehicles for DPS with this bond.
put a couple together. Any comment, as so aptly described previously by our chairs on this item? Seeing no comment, take the previous long roll call.
The item is approved, 15-0. Item 6789, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $896,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BPS 23, vehicle acquisition and replacement.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move this for Budget and turn it over to Economic Development. Thanks.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. As was beginning as inventoried by Legislator Shimsky, it is replacement vehicles. As Commissioner Longworth presented in front of our committee, he said this represents about 10% of the vehicles that are out there. They expect a 6-month lead time to replace these vehicles due to the specialized nature of the equipment. And with that, we pass on to infrastructure for the completion of the inventory.
Ms. Shimsky.
Yes, in addition to the vehicles, we're also purchasing 8 in-car computer vehicle systems to help increase the capability of our DPS personnel in that regard as well. These are necessary purchases to keep up with ordinary wear and tear, as Legislator Smith discussed.
Very good. Legislative comment? Seeing none, take the previous long roll call.
The item is approved, 15-0. Item 6860, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is an amended bond act authorizing the issuance of $700,000 in bonds of the county, including $150,000 in previously approved bonds to finance capital project B015C, Interior Infrastructure Repairs, White Plains Complex, 2011 through 2015.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move it for Budget and turn it over to Economic Development.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. As discussed and approved in the Economic Development Committee, we move on to the Infrastructure Committee.
Okay, I will discuss this item, item 6860, as well as item 6861 together. They are discrete but complementary projects. The department is seeking to do them both at the same time and hopefully getting some cost savings. The first project that we're on now, 6860, is to replace existing steam vacuum pumps. 6861 is to replace steam piping in the basement. And once again, these are necessary things to keep our buildings in good repair.
Very good. Any legislative discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the prior along roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item 6861, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond act authorizing the issuance of $2,500,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project B015C, Interior Infrastructure Repairs, White Plains Complex, 2011 through 2015.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you. So moved for budget, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. As discussed and approved in Economic Development, we move on to Infrastructure Committee.
As previously discussed, so moved.
Absolutely. Any discussion? Otherwise, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item 6862, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond act authorizing the issuance of $4 million in bonds of the county to finance capital project SY037, Yonkers Joint Treatment Plant Bulkhead Rehab.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to move it for the Budget Committee and pass it on to my colleagues.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. As discussed and approved in Economic Development, we move on to Infrastructure Committee.
Oh, you're right. This is, okay, yes.
Ms. Shimsky.
I neglected to know, thank you, Legislator.
I didn't know if you
Marcotte. Yes, we are overing this one. We're still awaiting some final information from the administration.
I don't know if you can over it. Why you
So technically, it's,
Well, I didn't make the motion yet.
okay. Usually it's during the read of an
Recommit.
over. It's a recommit. Do you want to recommit just to the one committee or all three committees?
We could
At the-
just
at the,
read it to the one.
It's fine while she's waiting for the information.
The one committee. So it's a recommit to infrastructure
Okay.
on this, on
Okay,
item
that won't work.
6862. Okay?
Nine, just to infrastructure.
Item 6863, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond act authorizing the issuance of $1,292,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project SY024, Yonkers Joint Wastewater Treatment Plant Secondary System Rehab.
Ms. Markup.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. I'll pass it on to Economic Development.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. This is to fund the design and construction management associated with replacement and rehabilitation of secondary systems at the Yonkers Joint Wastewater Statement. There is no odor remediation component of this project, as there is no odor remitted in this process. With that, we pass on to infrastructure.
Ms. Shimsky.
Yes, this involves work involving various repairs, many of which were necessitated by damage due to Superstorm Sandy. So this is necessary work to keep our treatment plant in good shape and to prevent being even more offensive to the neighbors. So we voted it out.
Excellent. Any legislative discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
Approved, 15-0. Item 6864, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $500,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project SY019, Yonkers Joint Treatment Plant Grit Handling Improvements.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you. So moved for budget.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. This project is to fund design and construction management for improvements to remove it, for the grit handling equipment removal. The system was originally built without any redundancy out there, so the county is the project is exposed on grit handling. It's expected that this project, when completed, will have a 20-year life. The grit, as currently this process is hauled away. There is, again, no odor issues associated with this process. It is a 12-month design, and it is expected that 15 months of construction after design. With that, we pass on to infrastructure.
Excellent.
This equipment gets a lot of wear and tear on it. Grit is very abrasive and causes damage. Therefore, it requires frequent servicing and/or replacement. It will have side benefits. It will help the rest of our equipment function better. There's also the possibility it may make a marginal difference with the odor in the area. So under circumstances, the committee approved it.
Excellent. Any legislative discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item is approved, 15-0. Item 6865.
Over.
Over, Legislator Shimsky. Item 6866, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects.
No, just the first two, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Oh, that's right. Submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure and Budget and Appropriations is a bond act authorizing the issuance of $250,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project SW010 Asset Management Program for DEF facilities.
Ms. Markup?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So moved for budget, and I will turn it over to the Committee on Infrastructure.
Ms. Shrimsky?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No problem.
The Department of Emergency Facilities already runs its own asset management program, but there were certain upgrades to the program which will enable them to keep track of certain information better in terms of scheduled wear and tear of equipment, which will enable them hopefully to get on, to make sure they stay on track with replacing equipment, because if things go out sooner than one expects, we could end up with serious problems, including consent decrees. So this software will help them keep up with the equipment better and will hopefully help us avoid such situations in the future. So moved.
Yes, Department of Environmental Facilities does a fine job. We have this item before us. Any discussion? Seeing none.
Just a question on this particular item. Is it also out of economic development?
No, that was a mistake.
No. That was a mistake. It's a typo. It should just read Committees on Infrastructure, Budget Appropriations, according to our excellent clerk. And Chairman Smith.
I can't tell.
So we have the two committees before us. Any other questions, thoughts? Mr. Jenkins on? Okay, good. Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item is approved, 15-0. Item 6867, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond act authorizing the issuance of up to $900,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project SNR 85 Sewer System Rehab, New Rochelle Sanitary Sewer District.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move it for budget and turn it over to Economic Development.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. This project is for design and construction management in conjunction with the rehabilitation of the Drake Avenue and Hudson Park siphon chambers, which is on the county trunk line, which carries sewage to the New Rochelle wastewater treatment. The facility was initially constructed in 1955. It entails currently this project will allow for better employee access to the facility. It's expected that it's going to be a 9-month design, and the construction should take about 15 months. With that, we move on to infrastructure.
Ms. Shipsky?
Yes, these improvements are anticipated to increase employee safety and take care of such items as HVAC and other ambient physical plant concerns, as well as odor control. For that reason, we chose to approve it in infrastructure. This is needed work.
Any legislative discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item is approved, 15-0. Item 6868, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond act authorizing the issuance of up to $1,250,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project SM002, Mamaroneck Wastewater Treatment Plant Outfall Jetty Rehab.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you. I'll move it for budget and turn it over to economic development.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. This deals with the design and construction management in conjunction with the replacement of steel pilings encasing the outer wall jetty, which covers and protects the two outer walls at the Mamaroneck Wastewater Treatment Plant. The design is expected to be about 12 months, and funding request is expected to be showing up in the legislature next year. The design will have a specialized coating, which is expected to extend the life of this project for about 30 years. And what we're dealing with here is treated wastewater, which goes into the sound. With that, we move this on to the Infrastructure Committee.
Ms. Shimsky.
Yes, this project will help protect the plant and will hopefully make it function well and avoid serious problems with outflows to the sound as a result. So we therefore decided that the work would accomplish a good end. It's needed work. That area is in definite need of improvement. So therefore, infrastructure approved it.
Excellent. Mr. Jenkins, I note.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this item, I guess it's associated as well with 6869, the very next item. The bond act that's rescinding is the same bond act. Was there, it was approved, I guess, in 2004, so was that the reason that we needed to do a new bond act for the money, or was it an addition to the project? It looks like it's the same project.
Right.
He's jumping ahead.
I apologize for jumping ahead, Mr. Chairman, but it seems like they are connected.
Sure, certainly. Legislator Jenkins, the next act that we're coming upon is actually an act to rescind a bond act, which was originally issued on May 24th of 2004. The work itself was to do the rehab of the Mamaroneck Harbor Jetty. The project was actually completed prior to '07, and the project was actually done with cash, so we cashed up for it, therefore by no longer needing this bond, which is due to expire in about 6 weeks or so. So the act is to rescind the act because it wasn't needed. It was done. Again, it was done prior to '07, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. On 6868 itself, do we have any further questions at this time? Seeing no further questions, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item 6869, submitted by the Committee on Budget and Appropriations, is a bond act rescinding previously adopted Bond Act number 101-2004 in the amount of $500,000.
And we just have budget appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As previously stated, this was passed out of the Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Excellent. Any questions, comment, Mr. Jenkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the chair's Chair Marcotte's explanation on this. It was just essential to look at the specific action itself. So if we could, just so we would have it for future, just maybe in the text somewhere, that would have made this a little bit clearer for, at least for me. Thank you so much. It is definitely, the order would have been better the other way around, but it is what it is. But thank you so much. It does make sense. It is exactly the same work, at least that's what it appears in the rescinding act for the outfall jetty rehabilitation. I'm sure the work is a little bit different now from 2004. Thank you.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Otherwise, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item 6870, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond act authorizing the issuance of $2,150,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project SPC03, Portchester Wastewater Treatment Plant Electrical System Upgrade.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to move it for budget, and I'll turn it over to the Chair of the Economic Development Committee.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. This is for the design and construction management in conjunction with replacement and upgrading of electrical systems at the Portchester Wastewater Treatment Plant. This equipment was originally installed in 1987, as it was expected to have a 20 to 30-year life at that particular point in time now. This arose as a result of an HVAC study and it was determined that more extensive work was required in needing full electrical. This is scheduled to be an 18-month design process, a 30-month construction project, and once completed, this too is expected to have a 30-year life. And this, we were told that this was not, work is not being done in pursuant to any sort of consent order. With that, we pass it on to infrastructure.
Thank you.
Again, this, after thorough vetting in our committees, it was determined that this work was indeed needed, as are several other projects in the Port Chester plant. So for that reason, infrastructure approved it.
Excellent. Any legislative discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
Items approved, 15-0. Item number 6871, submit. Over Legislator Shimsky. Item number 6924.
Over.
Over Legislator Shimsky. Item number 6925, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects.
It's good.
Is a bond act authorizing the issuance of $2,300,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project SM075, Pump Station Rehab Program, Mamaroneck Sanitary Sewer District.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to move it for budget and turn it over to economic development.
As discussed and approved in economic development, we move on to infrastructure.
Yes, this project is to provide additional construction funding for flood hazard mitigation measures in connection with the rehabilitation of East Basin, West Basin, and Edgewater Point pumping stations in the Mamaroneck Sanitary Sewer District. There had been a fair amount of work done on this since, let's see, the work began about 6 to 8 years ago on this, but Superstorm Sandy made clear that there was other work that had to be done. Once again, there was thorough vetting in our committees on this, and we determined that the work was needed and should proceed as soon as possible, and therefore infrastructure approved it.
Excellent. Any legislative discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item number 6926, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects. Is an amended bond act reducing bond act number 189, 2009 by $798,000 in bonds of the county for capital project SM016, Mamaroneck Wastewater Treatment Plant, primary, secondary heating and chemical handling upgrades.
Ms. Markup.
So moved for budget. I'll turn it over to economic development.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. This is for the cost of construction for replacement and upgrading process equipment and all ancillary systems with the primary, secondary heating chemical handling at the Mamaroneck wastewater treatment. The original system was built in 1962, upgraded in 1982, and both the primary and secondary systems have reached the end of their useful lives. Design currently is at 60% for this project, and there are energy conservation components to the project, you know, with the installation of variable speed motors and better efficiencies in the boilers. With that, we move on to infrastructure.
Thank you very much. Again, this is needed work at the Mamaroneck wastewater treatment plant. The primary system process equipment involved dates from 1962. In 1982, the plant was upgraded to secondary treatment, but of course, lots of water has flown through it since, and it is definitely in need of repair. The bond for the construction has been reduced to the tune of $798,000, reflecting the unsold portion of an earlier bond.
Excellent. Legislators, any comments? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item number 6927, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond act authorizing the issuance of an additional $6,798,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project SM016, Mamaroneck Wastewater Treatment Plant Primary, Secondary Heating and Chemical Handling Upgrades.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to move it for the Budget Committee and turn it over to Economic Development.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. As previously discussed, we move on to infrastructure.
As previously discussed, so moved.
Excellent. Any discussion? Seeing none, take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item 6928.
Over.
Over, Legislator Shimsky. Item number 6929, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond act amending Bond Act number 126, 2009, which authorized the issuance of $1,800,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project S0S09, Ossining Wastewater Treatment Plant Boiler and Generator Replacement, by reducing the amount of the bonds by $1,796,000.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So moved for Budget, and I'll turn it over to Economic Development.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. This is an amended bond act which will deal with the design, construction, management, and construction associated with the replacement of the county's Ossining Wastewater Treatment Plant, including boiler, heater, and emergency generators, piping, as well as replacement of the air conditioning and equipment system in the facility. Currently, the project is at 90% design. Again, there will be energy efficiencies from smaller boilers. The boilers were from the 1980s, and they are currently at the end of their useful life. With that, we'll move it on to infrastructure.
Ms. Shimsky.
Yes, after a thorough vetting in our committees, it was determined that this work is needed, and the timeline, the construction is estimated to take 15 months after the award and execution of the relevant construction contracts. As I said, this is necessary work to upgrade our wastewater treatment capacity, and for that reason, infrastructure approved it.
Any legislative comment? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item number 6930, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond...
6931?
No.
30.
30.
Okay.
A bond act authorizing the issuance of $9,896,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project S0S09, Ossining Wastewater Treatment Plant, Boiler and Generator Replacement.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was moved by Budget, and I'll turn it over to Economic Development.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. As discussed and approved in economic development, we move on to infrastructure.
As previously discussed, so moved.
All right. Any legislative discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item number 6931.
Over.
Over, Legislator Shimsky. Item number 6933, submitted by the Committees on Infrastructure, Public Safety, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, is a bond act authorizing the issuance of $300,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BIT 32 radio system replacement.
Yes, we have a budget. Ms. Markup.
So moved for Budget, Mr. Chairman. I'll pass it on to Economic Development.
Thank you, Legislator Marcotte. As discussed and approved in the economic development, we move this on to public safety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was vetted thoroughly at the Public Safety Department meeting. We discussed this extensively with representatives of the IT department. We've determined that the radio equipment issue has reached its useful life. We're concerned about the various departments that conduct emergency services having the most enhanced technology possible. We're concerned about interoperability between these radio systems. There's real concern about having, as I say, communications be as efficient as possible, given the emergency services department's needs. And as such, we strongly recommend that it be passed, and I pass this measure along to infrastructure.
Ms. Shimsky.
As the Chair of Public Safety said, we are in a point where we should definitely update our radio systems. This is going to be part of a multi-phase project. We're still working out the design and the needs assessment for this. We will be using a consultant for the needs assessment. It's anticipated that this work is going to take approximately 9 months. It's possible that the bond for the actual work may come by the end of this year, but probably more likely the beginning of next. Under the circumstances, the Infrastructure Committee felt it important that this work proceed, and therefore we approved the request.
Excellent. Any legislative discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item number 6874, submitted by the Committees on Seniors and Constituencies and Budget and Appropriations, is an act authorizing the county to enter into grant agreements with the New York State Office for the Aging, accepting grant agreements under the AAA Transportation Operating Expense Program, and enter into IMAs with municipalities for services funded by said grants.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This morning, the Budget and Appropriations Committee held a joint meeting with seniors and constituencies. There's several grants that are coming up on this budget. On this agenda, I'm happy to move this for budget, and my colleague Bernice Breckman will tell you about each individual grant. So I'll move it on to senior services.
Okay.
Ms. Breckman.
Okay. The first one that we're doing is the services to be provided with the funds from this New York State Office for the Aging grant will be used for senior citizen transportation. These funds will also be used to increase riders in the taxi fare reimbursement program. That's the first one.
Excellent. Any discussion on the item before us? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
Okay.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item number 6875, submitted by the Committees on Seniors and Constituencies and Budget and Appropriations, is an act authorizing the county to enter into intermunicipal agreements with one or more local municipalities for the provision of various services to seniors to be funded by county tax dollars.
Ms. Marcotte.
So moved for budget, and I'll turn it over to seniors.
Okay, this is an IMA for funding from New York State Office for the Aging for programs and services such as food nutrition, long-term care, health and wellness targeted to the frail and elderly residents.
Very good. Any legislative discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item number 6932, submitted by the Committees on Labor, Parks, Planning, and Housing and Budget and Appropriations, is an act authorizing the county to modify the mortgage and note secured by said mortgage with Washingtonville Housing Alliance Incorporated and Interfaith Council for Affordable Housing Residents on the two-family house located at 230 Center Avenue, Mamaroneck, in order to release I-Care from the mortgage and note.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As stated, this is an act for a mortgage modification. We've been advised by the Planning Department that WHA, which is now an affiliate of West Hab, requests an amendment to the mortgage and note to release I-Care from its obligations under the mortgage and note. Such obligations will be accepted by WHA, which will also acquire I-Care's 50% ownership of the property and will continue to operate the property as affordable rental housing. All of the other terms of the mortgage and note will remain the same. This was discussed at length in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, joint with Parks and Labor. I'm happy to move it from my committee, and I'll turn it over to Legislator Harcum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As discussed by the Budget Chair, so moved.
All right, item 30 before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item number 6934, submitted by the Committees on Seniors and Constituencies and Budget and Appropriations, is an act authorizing the county to enter into grant agreements with the New York State Office for the Aging to accept grant funds under the Wellness and Nutrition Program, and to enter into IMAs with local municipalities for services to be funded by said grants.
Ms. Marcotte?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to move this and accept the grants, and I'll turn it over to senior constituencies.
Okay.
Beckman?
This is an IMA for funding from the New York State Office for the Aging for congregate and home-delivered meals, nutrition education to improve the well-being of the elderly individuals who are at risk.
Excellent. Any legislative comment, discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item number 6935, submitted by the Committees on Seniors and Constituencies and Budget and Appropriations, is an act authorizing the county to enter into grant agreements with the New York State Office for the Aging to accept grant funds under the Community Services for the Elderly Program, and to enter into IMAs with local municipalities for services to be funded by said grants.
We have Ms. Marcotte from Budget.
Thank you. So moved for budget, and I'll turn it over to senior constituencies.
Okay. This is for funding for case management information assistance and other necessary services to help seniors remain in their homes and community.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item number 6936, submitted by the Committees on Seniors and Constituencies and Budget and Appropriations, is an act authorizing the county to enter into grant agreements with the New York State Office for the Aging to accept grant funds under the Expanded In-Home Services for the Elderly Program, and to enter into IMAs with local municipalities for services to be funded by said grants.
Last one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the last grant. Happy to move it for the Budget Committee, and I'll turn it over to seniors services.
Okay. I'm going to talk about this one just a little bit because it's the ISEP program, and it also is a program that helps people on a sliding scale get help in their homes so that they don't have to go to nursing homes. They're taken care of in their homes, and if they can afford it, they pay on a sliding scale. It's very, very important. It's cheaper than putting somebody away in a nursing home. And I don't know why that the state doesn't realize this, and we get more money for ISEP, so people don't have to spend that much money in nursing home, and they don't get that much care as they do at home. It's really an important one, and there's a long, long waiting list for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beckman. Thank you, Ms. Beckman. Any legislative comment this time? Otherwise, seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved. All right, item's approved, 15-0. Item number 6799, submitted by the Committees on Law and Budget and Appropriations, is an act settling the lawsuits of West Fair Electrical Contractors, Inc. versus Westchester Community College and Westchester County, and Clean Air Quality Service, Inc. versus Westchester Community College and Westchester County.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, I'd like to address the next three items, and then we can take them individually. Item 34, this is an act which will agree to the settlement terms that have been proposed by the Law Department. The Budget Committee met earlier this morning, and we thoroughly vetted this. We had a lengthy executive session to speak to the litigation and the settlement. The settlement is a result of a project that was held, or a rather large construction project that was held at Westchester Community College several years ago. And as a result of, I suppose, some unfortunate timing and events and overrun in the project, litigation came about, and as a result, we are settling this. It is my understanding that the county is liable in this regard, both as a sponsor and as a conduit of the funding. We are responsible due to, or according to, New York State education law. So I would urge my colleagues to support this rather large settlement. Unfortunately, the first The first item is agreement to the terms. The second item would be to amend the budget. And the third item would actually be an act to authorize the issuance of the bonds. Law Committee passed it earlier, I believe, last week. Again, they were advised by the Law Department after thoroughly vetting it and lengthy discussions. So for budget, I will move this item first. Thank you.
Excellent. And Mr. Williams is not with us this evening, but Mr. Maizano and Mr. Burrows are for law. If you'd like to.
Pretty much echoing exactly what the budget chair indicated. We did go into executive session with county attorney's office. Apparently, some things should have been done in a certain manner. I was convinced after the executive session that the county negotiated a good deal, and we're asking everybody to sign off on this.
Excellent. And the legislative comment, Ms. Shimsky.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I was involved in both committee discussions, and what became apparent was the amount of money that was indisputably owed the plaintiffs was close enough to the settlement price that it would not have paid to litigate this. So for those reasons, it made ample sense to approve the settlement as proposed. But there were questions raised with regard to how complex projects are overseen at the college, which has their own structure, when we're the ones who, under state education law, are responsible for whatever overruns might happen. So this is something we'll probably be looking at as we go forward.
Excellent. Any legislative discussion, Mr. Jenkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question on this particular matter is not whether it's disputable about the amount that's owed. The question, I guess, for us remains about the liability to the county alone in this particular item. I'm not sure if this particular item is also connected with any work that was funded by the state to do the construction under, whether it's under School Construction Authority or anything like that. But the question about managing is so we don't have a situation like this happen again. Mr. Chairman, you will recall that we had this situation several times with the community college, including in Mount Vernon, when we spent additional $1 million on, I guess, stoves that were inappropriately placed because the community college did not measure out properly the installation of the stoves for the cooking program in Mount Vernon at the satellite opportunity. I thought we had put in place items then to prevent this kind of tragedy from happening again, because this $2 million certainly would be best spent on those students that go to Westchester Community College to keep the cost down. I did not see in any of the settlement language, and while watching the discussion today, see anything that we are doing to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. I'm certain that we will. But since we've had this situation with the community college a few different times already, I'm hopeful that we'll find something to do with this. There's not really there's no good solution for us other than to settle this particular item based on the facts that are in front of us. But we can't continue to have the community college be in this particular position. And I know that they're coming up for their budget shortly. So again, I'm not sure how to resolve that particular problem, but I'm sure that we would have that on our agenda.
I will pass on your good wishes Wednesday evening at the college gala. Ms. Shimsky, to the point at hand.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. To allay some of Mr. Jenkins's concerns, by my calculation, over $1.5 million of this goes to pay for value which was received by the college. The only amount at issue, as I said, is a relatively small percentage of the settlement price. At this point, it's possible that DASNY, which is the state authority in charge of capital projects of this kind, may reimburse us for approximately half of this. And as far as the more structural issues, there is, as Mr. Jenkins pointed out, there were earlier issues. There's this one, And at this point, I want to hear what is said about the ceiling collapse at the Student Center, which happened 2 weeks ago, is that now? So we can try to see what patterns there might be, and that will enable us to more intelligently address the issue of what might be lacking or might not be lacking, and what we might be able to do to help ensure the quality of oversight of projects. Thank you.
Mr. Gelfarb, sir.
Yes, I was just going to echo, I had in mind to mention what Legislator Shimsky referred to, the fact that a substantial amount of this money may well be reimbursed by the state. Also, we sort of allowed these bid documents to kind of be a bit of an exercise in self-delusion, because as was explained, there was only a 3% allowance for change orders and extras and so forth, and that really was not a very, very realistic amount for a project of this complexity. So ultimately, more work had to be done, and as was indicated, the work really was done, so it is only realistic to assume that we're going to have to pay for it, but it would behoove us in the future to put together more realistic bidding documents. So.
Excellent. Ms. Shimsky, any other colleagues?
To that narrow point.
Okay.
The apparent reason why the bid documents were constructed the way they were is because the building was very close to exceeding our $10 million bond cap. We are the only county in the state that has that bond cap, and this goes to show that sometimes with the bond cap, things are actually done more inefficiently. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, one very brief thing also, this also demonstrates that something called the WICS Act has a real impact on us as well. Under state law, we're not allowed to have one general contractor run the project. We have about 4 prime contractors, and thus there's a lot of inefficiencies built into it, so that's something to consider as to why we ended up where we are.
Okay, Ms. Shimsky, I think it's your turn.
I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jenkins, sir.
No, Mr. Chairman, it's my turn. The only concern that we have, we've had this situation before. We had a scenario where I'm not sure where the breakdown is on that, whether DPW has to take over the job and do the construction, and we let our fine, outstanding educators educate. But we certainly have had this argument before with the community college, and it has nothing to do with the contracts that are let and whether they give enough balance as far as making sure that there's enough contingency fund. We have professionals that do this stuff, and we certainly have funding that comes from outside of the county, specifically DASNY in this case, that does not have that $10 million cap. And I'm not sure, again, Mr. Chairman, on this particular item. I know all of us are concerned with this, so I hope that we're going to try to find a way to make sure that these projects are better managed because they did happen before. Thank you.
Ms. Shimsky.
We're narrowing the funnel, we really are, folks. But I just wanted to point out that there was a change in the county charter, I think it was in 2006, which separated the DPW functions between the community college and the county government itself. So our DPW cannot legally go in and perform these functions for the college as the charter stands now. One of the things when we develop the universe of possibilities, we may want to go back to the old system. But this is something, a conversation that I hope will develop over the course of several months.
Another day?
All healthy discussion, all relevant, and all underscore how important the legislative role is in oversight and working forward to continue to make sure we discharge our duties. With that said, any further conversation, any discussion? None would be an appropriate answer. At this time, we will take, I don't even remember what it is, but we will take the prior long roll call for approval.
The item's approved, 15-0.
Excellent.
Item number 6849, submitted by the Committees on Law and Budget and Appropriations, is an act amending the 2014 county operating budget to increase the appropriation for contractual services in the amount of $2,198,458 to finance the cost of payment of settled claims against the county in the cases Clean Air Quality Services and West Ferry Electrical Contractors versus County of Westchester Westchester Community College.
Excellent. Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As previously discussed and stated, I'm happy to move this for the Budget Committee, and I would turn it over to a member of the Law Committee.
Mr. Burrows, so moved. Pithy, to the point, and any legislative comment at this time? Seeing none, take the prior long roll call.
The item's approved, 15-0. Item number 6850, submitted by the Committees on Law and Budget and Appropriations, is a bond act authorizing the issuance of $2,198,458 in bonds of the county to finance the cost of payment of settled claims against the county in the cases Clean Air Quality Services and West Ferry Electrical Contractors versus County of Westchester, Westchester Community College.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This would be the final item as previously discussed. I'm happy to move this for the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and I would turn it over to a member of the Law Committee.
Mr. Burrows. Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for your patience, and more importantly, thank to the committees and to the members of the committees for your work in a very workmanlike fashion on all of this. Do we have any prior discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think you declared this passed.
No, I haven't done that yet. That was just a prefatory comment. I'm going to get to it. Do we have any prior, any discussion on this item? Seeing none, we'll take the prior long roll call. Wasn't sure where to insert my comments, but I figured we'd do it there. That's all, it's fine. So this item
is approved.
Is approved. Excellent.
15-0.
No problem.
Motions, resolutions, call of the districts.
Colleagues, Mr. Testa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to please join you on the resolution for Dennis Castelli.
Excellent. Ms. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to join you on the resolution of Roy Corbin, his sad, untimely death. It's a great loss to his family, especially his parents, who I've known for many years.
And Hope is with us tonight, and a lovelier, more beautiful person you will never find. And our condolences from the entire legislature, Hope, on the loss of your beloved son. Mr. Jenkins, sir.
And I, too, I believe all legislators would certainly be.
That would be, of course, appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, earlier, we heard, first, let me add to the memorial resolutions the name of Silvera Hyacinth. I'll get you the spelling, ladies. So Silvera Hyacinth. Tonight, earlier, we had the folks from the Mental Health Guidance Center, and certainly, you know, we've all stood together on both sides of the aisle to support mental health services here in Westchester County, and we're going to continue to do that together for our mental health folks. But every time, it just reminds us how important mental health is, and the reason I want to bring that up is because a little earlier this year, we had another New Rochelle resident with great promise who had mental health issues. And he was a college student, and he leapt to his death from off of a student dorm. Certainly a person that needed our assistance, and as we continue, as the young lady from Yonkers High so eloquently stated about understanding how mental health issues need to be brought out the shadows, and certainly we need to take care of addressing those specific issues. But it also tied into, and it was just by happenstance that it tied into a good majority of the speakers tonight with the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform. And while some of us may not agree with all of the things that they were saying, one of the core portions they were talking about was how the county deals with mental health issues. Mr. Chamberlain, that some folks know and some folks don't know, the police were there for 2 hours. They weren't there for 5 minutes. It wasn't a bang-bang situation. They were there for 2 hours, and our crisis intervention team that has been decimated from the county, and I hope that we all heard that portion, that we should go back and revisit that particular item as far as the crisis intervention team and the mental health and the mobile health care units that Dr. Grant Mitchell when he was here first started. And that ride-along program that was very successful, not only here in White Plains, addressing the Grant and Connie Russo situation, but down in Yonkers and trying to protect not only the police officers, which it actually helped the police officers, as well as protect those folks on the mental health issues. The last point, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the time, is to bring up that we heard from Michael Curdy about the SPI scenario, and I want to just bring up again that I know, but my specific action will be back in court on the 14th of May, and one of the specific things, and I want to make sure that we put this again on the record, I did put it in the communication, but there's 3 specific things or 2 specific things that my action calls for, which is declare the agreement illegal, null, and void as it vests SPI, the Commissioner of Westchester County Parks, Recreation, and Conservation, and or others with the authority and jurisdiction to control, operate, and manage Playland Park in violation of the laws of Westchester County. And what that would do, saying declaring the agreement illegal, null, and void as it transfers a function of county government that this board controls based on the charter. So one of the things that, for me, is important with that is the next part. That in the letter that was sent to all of us, Mr. Chairman, through Mr. Harkin, the chair of the Parks Committee, I would point to my colleagues in the agreement that is signed, and whether, you know, it survives in court's a different scenario. But Section 22B of that specific section says specifically on standard insurance and indemnity to provide defense for and defense at its sole expense any and all claims, demands, or causes of action directly or indirectly arising out of this agreement, and to bear all other costs and expenses. So I don't know where the SPI folks assume that their legal costs and actions will be covered, but the agreement that was signed says otherwise. So I think that is something important as we continue down the deliberative path that this legislature has to do, to have that in the back of their mind. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any additional motion resolutions called with the district? Ms. Williams?
Yes, I'd also like to add my name to, along with Ms. Shimsky, to Paul Jutner. He's the husband, or the late husband of Diana Jutner, who is a town council person in the town of Greenberg.
I think many legislators would like to join that, certainly.
Yes.
We have a legal Borgia now, and Mr. Smith. Ms. Borgia? You want to join out to it? So, okay. Mr. Smith?
Same thing, I'd like to join on Paul Jackson.
Excellent, excellent. I just want to note before we turn to Ms. Marzano, on behalf of the institution, certainly to Jean and to your wonderful family, Ms. Marzano, the unfortunate loss of your father-in-law, Michael Barno. And certainly the entire legislature mourns the passing.
Thank you. Yeah, I did want to mention that at the end of the meeting. As you all know, my father-in-law died last Monday. Really a great guy. You know, he lives in Western Pennsylvania, a small town called Ebensburg. If you know that area, it's out by Altoona and Johnstown, way past Penn State, about 5.5 hours away. But he was a great man, very kind to me, great father, great husband, married for 58 years to Jean's mom. He had a bunch of heart attacks over 15 years, and sadly we knew one was going to end his life, and it happened last Monday night. So we were out there all last week. We had the funeral on Friday, but he had 2 kids, Eric and Jean, and he had a great life. He was in Navy, served his country, was an engineer. He worked on a lot of shopping malls throughout Western Pennsylvania with a major engineering company. And the one thing everybody said at the wake, which was really nice for Jean to hear, your dad was the nicest guy I ever met. And that's a great way, I guess, to attend a wake and a funeral. Hear people thought that way about your dad. So his name was Michael Barno, and I would like to have him included at the end of our meeting for a moment of silence. He was a very kind man. He was very good to me, and I'm going to miss him a lot. Thank you.
Ms. Borgia?
Sorry, I did want to mention that one of the names on my memorial resolutions is Mary Cheever, who was the wife of John Cheever, the author who sort of memorialized Westchester living. Invite any legislator who'd like to go along on her memorial resolution to join me.
Certainly would join you and perhaps others as well, yeah. Okay. All right, excellent. At this point, let's stand for a motion of silence for all those who we are noting their passing. I'll accept the motion to adjourn this time. Board.
Okay, I move that we adjourn this meeting and reconvene at our regularly scheduled meeting on May 19th, 2014 at 7 p.m.
Short roll call, please.
Majority Leader Borgia?
Yes.
Minority Leader Testa? Mr. Mazzano? Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Passes 15.
We are adjourned. Thank you.